Okay, so for today's lesson, we're going to be doing the power rule when finding derivatives. So the power rule, we're going to see this a lot today, and then we're going to do derivatives with sine and cosine. So with the power rule, if you have a power with that you're trying to take the derivative of, you can take the exponent and you move it out front to be your coefficient, and then you take 1 minus that exponent, and that is the derivative of that term. The derivative of sine is cosine, and the derivative of cosine is negative sine. So let's go through these examples. It says find the derivative of each function. So taking the derivative of this is our power. We are going to move that out front, and then I subtract 1 from it. I'm going to need to multiply that with 3 to get 6. 2 minus 1 is just 1. We don't need to write that little 1, so we just say the derivative of f of x is 6x. Okay, so again, we just moved that 2 and multiplied it with the 3 to get the 6. And then I take the exponent down by 1, so that's an understood 1. For number 2, we just apply the power rule to each term. So for the first term, my exponent is 3. I move it out front, and then I subtract 1 from 3 to get 2. Here I move that 2 out front. I have to times it with the 3, so I get 6. And then I take this down by 1, so it just stays x. The understood exponent here is 1. I move that out front, so it's 2. 1 minus 1 is 0. X to the 0 power is 1, so it just becomes that constant 2. The derivative of a constant is 0. So the derivative of negative 1 is 0. I don't include it. So there is my derivative. We just talked about how the derivative of a constant was 0. Well, here, when I take the derivative of this, the derivative of negative 3 is just 0. Okay, with these, I'm going to do some rewriting. So remember, if we have an exponent in the denominator, so let's say like 1 over x squared, I can move this to the numerator by making it a negative exponent. Same thing vice versa. If I have x to the negative 3, I can rewrite this by pushing it into the denominator, and it makes it positive. So here, I'm going to rewrite this so that x squared is in the numerator. And then I apply the power rule here. So I move this negative 2 out front. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. And then I subtract 1, so it's x to the negative 3. Okay, so there's my derivative. We don't want any negatives in our answer, so I push that to the denominator just like we did here so that it is positive. Okay, I am going to rewrite this so that I can get rid of the square root and get rid of the 1 over x, so just that everything's in the numerator. So square root of x I rewrite as x to the 1/2. I rewrite this term as x to the negative 1, because that is an understood 1, plus 4. So taking the derivative, this term right here, the derivative of x squared is 2x. I moved that 2 out front and then took 1 away. For this term, I moved the 1/2 out front, subtract 1 from that. We can think about 1 as 2 halves, so that's negative 1/2. Here, I move the negative 1 out front. It becomes plus 1 for the coefficient. And then it's x to the negative 2. And then the derivative of 4 is just 0. Okay, so there's our derivative. We're going to rewrite this. I push this into the denominator so it becomes positive. Same thing with that. Okay, for number 6, I'm going to move the 1/4 to the coefficient. When I subtract 1 from that, we want to think about that as 4/4. So 1/4 minus 4/4 is negative 3/4 minus 7/5 x. When I minus 1 from that, thinking about 5/5, I get 2/5. Okay, so there's the derivative. I need to push this into the denominator so that it's positive. And there's the derivative. Okay, a few more. This is now going to incorporate sine and cosine. So when I go take the derivative of number 7, the derivative of cosine is negative sine x. So this is going to become negative 3 sine x for that term. The derivative of this term is just negative 4. Whenever you have an x, you just can drop it, taking the derivative, it's just the coefficient. Again, because that doesn't understood 1, moving that out front doesn't change anything. 1 minus 1 is 0. X to the 0 is 1. And then the derivative of 2 is just 0. So there's the derivative of f of x. Rewriting this one, moving that x to the 4th up. Okay, the derivative of 2x is 2. The derivative of cosine is, the derivative of sine is cosine, so this becomes 5 times cos x. Moving this out front becomes 12x to the negative 5th, because you minus 1 from there. And then, of course, we got to rewrite it because of that. So we have 2 plus 5 cos x plus 12 over x to the 5th. Our last one. Okay, we need to rewrite this. So this is going to become x to the 2/3, because that's your root, minus cos x. So when I take the derivative, I move the 2/3 out front, minus 1 from that leaves me with negative 1/3. The derivative of cosine is negative sine. So we got to do a little simplifying. So 2 over 3 x to the 1/3, that becomes plus sine x. And there's the power rule and then sine and cosine derivatives.